Welcome to Hood War Stories. In this episode, I'll be discussing the life of Timothy Wayne Johnson. Timothy Wayne Johnson, also known as Sinister, was born January 14, 1970, in Los Angeles, California. He was raised in a loving two-parent home on 80th and Central. There, he and his brothers would play in their large backyard that was complete with a pigeon coop. His mother, Aileen, would give her sons and their friends Kool-Aid on those warm summer afternoons. When Timothy used to get in fights in the neighborhood, he knew what to expect, a good old-fashioned ass whooping. But he nor his brothers begrudged their parents' attempt at discipline. By most accounts, Timothy had a pretty wholesome childhood. His parents would take him and his brothers camping. Oregon's Crater Lake was a personal favorite of his. The Johnson parents gave their kids everything they could during their upbringing. What they couldn't give them was immunity to the forces that were transforming South Central. Timothy attended Drew Middle School. There he would be fighting kitchen crips on the daily. From that point on, the Johnson family found itself in a tug-of-war with the 89 family Swans. His parents dug in, pulling steadily. The gang yanked with adrenaline on the other side. The family pulled with love. The gang pulled with power and fear. The gang won. During his teen years, Timothy spent time at the Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, which was a youth detention center known for housing Black and Latino juvenile delinquents with gang affiliation. During the mid-'80s, Timothy attended Fremont High School, which is located on San Pedro Street. By this time, Timothy was fully immersed in the 89 Swans. With him being the younger brother of the notorious shot caller Clement Johnson, it was almost inevitable. The Johnson brothers went to extreme lengths to protect the small strip of territory they had, and completely terrorized the community doing so. Their reputation morphed into bloodthirsty Satan worshippers who would stop at nothing to give their enemies hell. Former resident Tamika Crawford said, "They walk into a party and everyone would just freeze. Their reputation literally paralyzed the room." Every time someone got killed, the police thought Timothy or Clement had something to do with it. In 1989, Timothy was acquitted of a double homicide. By the early 90s, the neighborhood controlled by the 89 Swans was not only the deadliest in the city, but in the entire country. In 1991 alone, there were 20 murders in the gang's half-square-mile turf. If all of Los Angeles had that same rate, there would have been more than 24,000 murders in the city, which is 6,000 more than the entire United States that year. Timothy and his brother were not responsible for all the mayhem, of course, but in a city with 100,000 gang members, they stood out. Police connected Timothy to numerous homicides. The problem was everyone in the community was afraid to come forward with information. In 1992, Albert Sutton was due to testify in a murder trial. He was killed, and the murder went unsolved. Although he was fully submerged in the gang life, Timothy took an interest in music. He was in a rap group called the Mobsters, also known as the 88 Mobsters, which is derived from 88th Street. By the early 90s, Timothy managed to catch the attention of Suge Knight, who was the infamous CEO of Death Row Records. This led Timothy to a record deal with Interscope. In August of 1994, Timothy released his debut studio album, Mobbin' for Life, which featured the popular song, I Won't Forget You, G. Timothy criticized Be Real on several songs on the album for neglecting and not giving back to the neighborhood after getting a record deal. Timothy and Be Real used to be good friends and grew up in the same neighborhood together. The album was also produced by Tony Pizarro, who was a record producer best known for working with the late Tupac Shakur. Timothy went to prison the same year his album was released. Its poor commercial success resulted in him being dropped from the label. Timothy was released from prison in 1999, and he made additional recordings. He recorded the song Smooth But Deadly, which was on the 2000 Cat to Save Him compilation album. He also made an appearance on Green Eye's High Blood Pressure album. Later that same year, Timothy was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder. While he was in prison, his girlfriend Sharice was on the 7800 block of Avalon Boulevard when she was shot numerous times. She died at the scene. After being released from prison in 2004, Timothy immediately started working on his follow-up project. Despite being a member of the Bloods, he collaborated with Crips, such as the Snowman Clique, which was a rap group from the Grape Street Crips. He also worked with Doc B, who had gang affiliation to the Inglewood families. Shortly after his release, on November 12, 2004, Carlos Harmon was murdered on the 900 block of East 88th Street. Allegedly, Timothy was right beside him, professed to be his friend, then shot Carlos in the back 5 times when he was turned around, allegedly. The police named Timothy as the trigger man, but were never able to charge him because everyone was too afraid to speak out. During the next few years, family and friends claimed that Timothy had changed. He became the father of 2 children and was leading a more responsible life. He had plans to remarry and was consistently seeking employment. Shortly after 3 a.m. on November 25, 2007, Timothy Johnson was shot multiple times on East 92nd Street in Watts. He was shot as he was returning home from a party. By the time police arrived, Timothy was dead, and the people who had been on the street with him had disappeared. A pit bull puppy that was chained in the yard was curled up on his body for warmth. Timothy's murder has gone unsolved, but allegedly his own hood did him in. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was said that Timothy allegedly killed people in broad daylight. It is ironic that he was gunned down by the shadows of the night. Like his brother Clemen, Timothy could also charm you with his charisma. A former neighborhood resident, Monique, detailed her first encounter with him. She said, "My cousin wanted me to meet Tim. However, I was uncomfortable with it because of the things people said about this young man. My cousin wanted me to talk to him about God and see if he'll come to church. I was not with it, but one day while sitting at her house, this guy comes over. Not knowing it was Timothy, he came in with a big smile I'll never forget. He was respectful when he came in and spoke to everyone. When he took my hand and asked my name, then told me his, my heart dropped. But we all talked, passed a few jokes, and told each other stories. He was so laid back. He was nothing like what people said. He was respectful, kind, and really funny. I guess never judge a book by its cover." Timothy Johnson leaves behind 2 kids. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.